Hey guys, it is your boy Davion. Welcome to another episode of Consciouztv. You guys already see what we're here to talk about. You guys know we got to talk about this Maya Angelou situation, child. But before we get started, you guys know that you can donate to the show at paypal.me/Consciouztv. You guys can donate also to my Cash App at $Consciouztv, as well as email me at consciouztv@gmail.com. Make sure that you rate, comment, share, and hit that notification bell, because YouTube has really been slacking on notifying my subscribers when I have uploaded new content. So you guys make sure that you hit that bell, and make sure when you hit that bell, you go into the option that says every time, so that you get a notification every single time. So you guys already know what we're here to talk about. I am here with a good friend of mine, and we're going to have a regular smegular conversation about this clip of Maya Angelou that has went viral. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the clip, and then I'm going to introduce my co-host, and then we're going to get into this conversation, okay? There's an old clip of Maya Angelou that has resurfaced on Twitter, and it began trending, and it is a clip of Maya Angelou explaining how she should be addressed. And in this 1990 interview, a 14-year-old girl calls the poet by her first name while asking her a question about interracial dating. And Maya Angelou responded with, "Thank you. And first, I'm Miss Angelou. I'm not Maya. I'm 62 years old. I've lived so long and tried so hard that a young woman like you or any other has no license to come up to me and call me by my first name. That's first. Also, because at the same time, I'm your mother, I'm your auntie, I'm your teacher, and I'm your professor, you see." Now, this has sparked insane. Now, this has sparked a interesting response from the public. You guys know that we're in that age where the millennials are very free and liberated. So there's a lot of conversation around respectability politics, and if they're still relevant to our culture, if this is a system that we want to continue to adhere to, honor, and acknowledge, or whether this is something that we want to, control, alt, delete with all the other sexist, patriarchal, homophobic, bigot, xenophobic, narrow-minded, oppressive ideologies that we are all confronting now in our current social climate. Now, I want to introduce to you my good friend, Troy from Georgia. Say hello to the people, Troy.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
They're doing just fine. I want to get your take on this. First of all, I know that you pulled up the clip before we came on to the podcast. What were your initial thoughts when you heard Maya Angelou's response to this 14-year-old girl?
Well, here's the thing is that I heard about what happened first before I actually watched the video. When I heard about what happened, I was kind of in agreement. Outside of the context, I was just in agreement that you should respect your elders and address them in the proper, way. But the more I heard about, the context around it and how it was done and who it was, how the girl came across, the more I started to kind of question whether that was the appropriate response from Miss Angelou. And then when I actually went in and watched the clip, I was definitely in disagreement. And I was kind of, okay, this is no disrespect. God bless the deceased. God bless the dead. Have utmost respect for Maya Angelou. And I think she was a great woman, great poet, everything. I was a little disappointed in Maya Angelou. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it and in the environment she said it in. And so there you go with the context, that provides the context. So I agree with what she said, but I don't agree with the context in which she said it in.
Okay, interesting. Because me and you are kind of, which is why I thought you would be the perfect person to actually have this dialogue with, because we kind of are on opposite ends of the spectrum. I don't agree with what she said, yet alone how she said it. I also do agree, though, about the context. This was a white audience, and I think it was interesting. And I know it was a different time frame in the 90s, and we weren't really so heavy into respectability politics, and black people weren't necessarily so mindful of certain behaviors and ways of addressing each other, especially when there's a certain crowd that we're in. We have done a lot of pandering to white people in terms of making sure that we are acting very quote unquote normal and civilized and non-threatened and being very domesticated before white people. But now the tides are kind of changing, where black people are kind of wanting to throw the middle finger up to white people, and if anything, show that respect to other black people in white spaces, instead of making white people feel safe, making black people feel safe in white spaces. So now, in this day and age, we there's a certain part of our community, as blacks, that is kind of taking an issue to seeing black people reprimand black people in front of white people, because we understand the way that racism works on a social level. We understand how that works in the media. We understand, the conspiracy against black people and the way that that's used against black people. So now we are more mindful of that. But when you say you agree with what she said, because I know I'm from the South. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in the South as well.
Okay, so we both are Southern, are Southern belles.
Right.
So we were raised, if anybody, if any blacks in the United States were raised around these narratives of having manners and being well behaved and yes ma'am and no ma'am, it would be obviously us, because those are very Southern principles and very Southern respectability politics. When you say that you agree, why do you agree that Maya Angelou should have, or that it was okay for her to tell that young girl to put a miss in front of her name?
I actually don't agree that she should have told that young girl to put a miss in front of her name. The only thing that I do agree with is that you should respect your elders. There is a certain respect that should just be given to elders just because they're the position they're in. They're older, they're wiser, they're more experienced, they've been here longer than you, that doesn't mean that gives an elder the right to abuse their power. Nobody should be given the right to abuse their power, but their authority, but there is an automatic authority level that is given to older people. There's just a certain level of respect that you have for people who have
yeah, absolutely.
That person is,
So
that's the only thing.
I guess the question where I'm scratching my head is, how is it disrespectful to refer to anyone by their government name? Like this young girl understood Maya Angelou to be a public figure like the rest of us. She promotes herself as Maya Angelou. She was doing an interview, being the personification, being the personality known as Maya Angelou. What was disrespectful about her saying hello, Maya, Amaya?
Right.
Like what was? Well, I'm not even going into the context. I ain't even going into the context of the actual show and like the setting, but just in calling you by your first name. If I'm a young person and you are a older individual, is considered disrespectful based upon who and why. Why is that disrespectful?
Well, it's just I don't like the term respectability politics, because it makes it sound like it's disingenuous, and I don't believe it is. I believe that just like a preacher has, or your pastor has a title. Okay, they have a government name, but you're not going to go up to your pastor and be like, "Hey, Ronnie, can you pray for me?" Common sense is just going to say, "Hey, Pastor Ronnie," because that's their position. That's the position they hold. Now, like my mom, I was raised, and most people were raised not to call their parents by their first name. You probably growing up don't even know your parents' name. All you know them by mama or daddy. And but it's just a title, it's a position. It's like I respect. It's pretty much just a way of demonstrating that I respect your position, that you hold you hold a position of authority.
So I can understand that though, but that's leaving out the nuance that this young girl was supposed to know that somehow. Maya Angelou isn't the president. She's not a pastor. She's not a nun. She's not a politician. She's a public figure who goes by Maya Angelou. And every other interviewer has called her Maya Angelou, including her so-called daughter, Miss Oprah Winfrey, her god baby. So
I agree.
That's
where we agree. That's where I agree with you, because like Maya Angelou, I've never heard her referred to as Miss Maya Angelou as long as I've been hearing Maya Angelou. We know her as Maya Angelou. It's kind of like a stage name. That's her name, but it's pretty much just that's her. She became famous off of Maya Angelou. So that's where I thought it was out of order. I don't even say out of order, but inappropriate for Maya to call the girls to the carpet. And the girl seemed so sweet, I was watching the video. It was just so innocent, Hey,
so let's just call the thing a thing. Maya Angelou was being a bitch in that interview. That was a bitch fucking move.
If you want to put it in,
I do. That was a bitch move. Like, you were just being a blatant bitch in that moment. It was right. And if she would have been before another type of black person, it might have been two divas in the room together, because that was so fucking unnecessary. And it does bring me back to growing up, how a lot of the adults, had these dumbass social rules you had to adhere to. And I am very uncomfortable by that. Like, I'm very uncomfortable by this idea that you should by default look down on someone, or that somebody isn't deserving of respect if their pants are hanging off their ass, or if they're dressed a certain type of way, or this idea of yes ma'am and no ma'am. Like, at the end of the day, disrespect is action. Is action. Me saying hello and calling you by your government name is not disrespectful. And if it means that much to you, you should head right on down to the government's office and have your name changed and insert Miss legally. Now, I don't have an issue with Maya Angelou wanting to be referred to as Miss. I definitely agree that the way she said it was out of whack, and the moment in which her addressing her in that moment about it was inappropriate. But I'm also confused as to why grown people think that this type of shit is disrespectful. Like, when my children, when they bring their friends over and their friends call me, "Hey, Davion," I'm not going to feel slighted being called by my first name. To be honest, I wouldn't even be slighted if my children called me by my first name. They know that I'm their daddy. So hearing dad, I'm not invested in terminology, because they're my children and they know that I'm their daddy. So what is it supposed to mean to me that you're calling me as your dad by my first name rather than the title daddy?
See, that's where I don't agree with that, because it's kind of like I don't even know what to call it. Like, I struggle to find the terminology.
It's called conditioning. It's called programming.
If you look at it that way, but I don't even see it that way. I see it as Okay. It's like it's kind of almost like symbolic. It's kind of like, okay, you can still call somebody Miss or Mr. and still disrespect them in action. But that's true, okay. But the whole idea is that it's just, it's supposed to do something in your mind, like to call somebody like, hey dad, hey pastor, hey reverend, hey miss, hey mister. It sets you up. It's like positioning your mind to remember that this is somebody in authority. Like this is an authority figure. Like saying the words is like an affirmation. It's like saying the words verbally is like an affirmation to remind you and to let that person know, or to acknowledge to that person that I'm recognizing that you're an authority figure and that I respect you. So it's like, without saying that every time, okay, hey, authority figure who I respect, can I have some, it's like, hey sister, hey dad, hey mom, just a simple way of acknowledging that person's authority. That's all it is. It's not really that deep to me. Like,
what's so funny about that is that is a very black thing, because I look at a lot of the way that white people raise their children, and there's like this fluidity in a white household where oftentimes white kids are allowed to really express their individuality. They're allowed to speak their minds. They're even allowed to use profanity when having conversation with their parents. And hold on. And white kids oftentimes are referring to their mothers and fathers by their first name, Jane, David, etc. And you don't really see these things become like, you don't see these things become an issue. And what I think it is I think that this goes back to black people being so disempowered in a very marginalized, oppressive society that black people have to literally scrape from the bottom of the barrel in order to feel somewhat empowered. Even if that means producing really meaningless systems of so-called principle that really don't mean nothing, but it's just like black people desperately struggling to even if it's on a man-made level, to make that respect. Like, even though like there's literally no life and spirit in you calling me Mr. and Mrs., because as you just said a few moments ago, you can call somebody Miss and Mr. and still disrespect them. So the verbiage and the respectability politics is very legalistic, as in it doesn't have any meaning in it in and of itself. But yet, like, we are very hell-bent on the respectability politics. And I think that that's just due to, like, black people not actually having fucking power and not actually having fucking authority. And so this way of living gives them the illusion of authority and the illusion of power, while never really getting to what the principle of authority actually is and really implementing that. Because when you actually have power, you can allow little Cody to call you by your first fucking name, because you know that you literally got the power to push his ass down 7 flights of fucking stairs. But because I think societally where black people are, we know that we don't have power. We see that we don't have power, and therefore we will create a spirit of power in spaces that literally make no sense, and we will create a context where there is no context for asserting power, and this thing kind of gets out of hand. And this is where that respectability politics shit comes from, because even that whole pull your fucking pants up and take your hat off when you're entering a building, like, all of that shit came from like white patriarchy. Like, those were white patriarchal respectability politics that black people adopted and assimilated to. Like every other goddamn politicking that's going on in the black community stems from racism and prison culture combined. And so I think, while some people are arguing that this clip is a teachable moment, yeah, I think it is a teachable moment. A teachable moment in the sense that, can't we see how fucking stupid this is? Can't we see how you are more invested in being called Miss than being identified as Maya? you would rather program me to look at you as a impersonal way, because Mr. and Mrs. is very impersonal to me. Like, I honestly had a problem growing up saying ma'am and no ma'am, because I felt like I was literally uncomfortable in my emotions when like my mom used to be like, that's yes ma'am, that's yes ma'am. That's because I could call everybody else yes ma'am and no ma'am but my mother for some reason. Now that I'm older, I realize it's because my mother meant more to me than a yes ma'am. Yes ma'am felt so empty of something. Right. And calling my mother yes ma'am made her seem like some type of mammy or some type of nanny or some type of something, when this was my mother. So for me, like, it never felt authoritative. It felt empty to call someone that I knew personally ma'am. I could easily do that with my teachers. I could do that with police officers. I could do that with hall monitors. I could do that with any other person. But when it came to, like, my parents, it just felt wrong to say ma'am. But then I'm a strange motherfucker. So
I think the same way about my mother. And but I have an aunt who, her children to this day, they in their 30s and 40s, and they still, ma'am, yes ma'am. But I get it, because I know how they were raised. And it's just they're not thinking it's impersonal. They're thinking it's just a sign of respect. I feel good about it because I'm just respecting you in your place, But so people just look at it different ways. And I also know, I look at it like this. It might be, although you can still just call somebody ma'am or sir and disrespect them still, or Mr. or Mrs., you think twice before you do. It's easier to say F you Karen than it is to say F you grandma, F you pastor. You just feel a different kind of way. So it's just I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's just different. Like, there's
it's super
an air about it. There's a feeling you get when you say it. It's like, okay, I'm just acknowledging. I feel good about acknowledging. I feel good about authority. I like that I have authority over me, and I'm going to acknowledge this person's. I'm going to acknowledge this person's authority. And if this person wants me to call them Mr. or Mrs., then I feel good about respecting people, so I'm going to respect that. It's kind of like that simple.
Yeah.
But I have seen people like look at the Jacksons, for example. Joe insisted that his children call him Joe and not Dad. And for whatever reason, I forget the reason they said he did that. I forget the reason. I was just listening to something about that. But look at this. Look how Michael talked about and thought about his dad, who he never called Dad. He called him Joe. And how, like, he kind of bad-mouthed him, like, for many years. So look how he treated his mother. Look how he talked about his mother, who he didn't call Catherine. He called her mother.
But that had nothing to do with... But I ain't got nothing to do with language. That had something to do with relationship. Because we also knew that, according to some of the Jacksons, Joe was very abrasive, could be interpreted to be abusive, a very difficult, one-track minded man who wasn't oftentimes very emotionally available. And so, like, the context of the actual relationship is what made the Jacksons, like, closer to Catherine and be more appreciative of that relationship than to give that credit to Joe.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Because Joe wanted the children to look at him as their manager, because that's what he was. He wanted them to respect him as a manager and not be... It's like he felt like if they called him Dad, they would be common with him. And he didn't want his children to get common with him. He wanted them to look at him as their manager. And the mother, she was the nurturing side. She was the nurturing parent. And so they affectionately called her mother. And but there's a level of respect that Catherine has from all of those children and grandchildren that Joe didn't have. And he was like, just look at that. I mean, it's just words, but words mean something. Like language.
Yeah, but I think that I think in this particular instance, we're putting way too much emphasis on words, because that has more to do with the relational aspect of.
Yeah, it was relational.
The way that all looks like Catherine was a loving figure to her children. Joe was an asshole. That's why the dynamic looked the way that it does. like it ain't got nothing to do with who was called ma'am and who wasn't called sir.
And it was easier for them to call him Joe because of that, because he was an asshole. So it was like Joe, like he's just another man to me. Like, and then I feel so cringe with it. I think if they were to call him Dad, they would feel like he doesn't have like a dad, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like to me it still goes back to a respect thing. It's like I would cringe on the inside, like if I ever called my mom by her first name, I would just cringe. Like that would feel so disrespectful. Like,
yeah, but not because it's actually disrespectful, but because like you've been programmed and conditioned to call her that, and so not calling her that would feel very weird. Like breaking habits come with weird feelings, and when we're used to doing something and we've normalized something and we are adopting a new way, it's going to feel awkward and weird. But just because we feel weird about not doing something doesn't mean that what we're doing is correct, because even bad habits feel correct to us. Even bad habits feel normal and natural to us. So just because we practice a thing and we do a thing and we do it all the time doesn't mean that when we stop doing it and there's a feelings of conviction about it, doesn't mean that those convictions are sincere, but that they are a result of not doing a thing that way anymore. Like,
you have a point, because you have a point.
Like, because, I would feel awkward too calling my grandmother by her first name. Now, I know mentally it's not wrong to actually call her by her first name, because that's what the fuck her first name is. But I've called her grandmother my whole life. And sometimes I jokingly call her by her first name, and I don't feel awkward. But I also, like, as a person who's trying to literally get, like, free from a lot of idiot ideology, I try to be mindful myself about not being invested in like the form of respect, but actually having respect. Because I feel like a lot of times, like, kind of like when the Bible says they had a form of godliness, but they weren't actually godly. I feel like that a lot of times about this whole idea of what's considered respect and disrespectful is we are more invested in respecting or having a form of respect while not really knowing anything about what actual respect is. Because I feel like real authority has nothing to do with, so like for instance, if I get pulled over by a officer, even if I don't call him officer, like, he's still a motherfucking officer, and he still has the power to reinforce the law as he sees fit to, or as necessary. And I would rather actually respect the law than to respect, like, a title. Like, my respect for you isn't going to go into a title. It's going to go into, like, my actual principle around respecting another human being. Now, you can check me kindly and respectfully, and I have no problem calling you Mr. or Mrs. But if we're going to talk about respect, then it can be argued that respect goes both ways. And if you are 60 years old and I am 21 years old, and you check me the way that Maya Angelou did, and then I say the way that you just spoke to me is disrespectful, do you have a right to respect me in return? And to check yourself?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when I was coming up, respect didn't work both ways, which is why I think I also have a thorn in my ass about respectability politics, because that shit only went one way. It didn't go both ways. And so you saw people who upheld So you saw people who upheld respectability politics abuse power and abuse authority. And I think that is why, and I think that that's why this generation of people is like, fuck y'all and the respectability politics y'all rode in on. Cause y'all are full of fucking shit. And it's time somebody hold y'all asses to task and take y'all ass to fucking task. Y'all were the same ones who said, speak when only spoken to. Y'all were the same ones who said, but you gotta show respect to get respect. But oftentimes you were allowed to disrespect me and to mute me and to discipline me. Even if you were wrong, I could not openly speak about the wrong you did because it's considered disrespectful.
Right.
Because you are my mother, or you are my father, or you are my uncle, or you are a elder. And you motherfuckers abused that privilege. You use that to oppress young people and to get away without having to be accountable for all of the dysfunction and bullshit that y'all did. So for me, it seems like a lot of the clapback just has to do with the fact that I think what a lot of older people don't like about our generation, like they will call our generation disrespectful, but what it really is that y'all had a certain form of privilege even as marginalized people, and y'all just don't like having y'all asses be held accountable. That's what it really is. What y'all are calling disrespect is accountability, motherfucker. Okay, go ahead. Because I can go on and on all day, chat.
I was saying, like when I saw that clip of Maya Angelou, it reminded me of like them mean old church mothers. Like them mean ushers, like they would like pinch you and like make you spit out the gum, and like while one hand is behind their back. But, like it's just like an excuse to be mean and miserable and nasty. Like I've seen that like in different establishments and churches. Like they were so mean and nasty, and it's like, and the person would just clam up. They couldn't say anything because it was a form they were respecting the position and their leadership. Like, okay, they were just like, and they call it being humble, but the person would just feel low or like be wussed out, however you want to say it. And it's like they had no balls or testicular fortitude, or somebody would call it. And it would just seem so, even as a child when I would see that, it would just seem so wrong to me. Like, it's like, I look at this person and they are like, they do are owed respect, but the way they're using it is like, just something feels wrong about that. And like even as a child myself, like my grandparents and like I wasn't allowed to express my opinion. If I would say something like, and I felt some kind of way, like about how they were talking to me, and made me feel some kind of way, and I would say, that made me feel. Well, don't tell me how I feel the next time.
I'm the adult. You're the child. You stay in a child's place.
Right, exactly.
I'm the mama.
So you weren't even allowed to have feelings, apparently, because you were a child. And that's damaging, because that's what has created the sickness in our society in some ways, because we growing up as children and we were taught that we weren't allowed to express our feelings or even come to. So we didn't even feel comfortable, some of us, I'm talking about some of us, not all of us.
Most of us, if you were black, most of us were not allowed to have a humanity as it relates to so-called authority.
And we grew up not knowing how to express how to deal with these feelings and thoughts that we have, and it's like, well, and that'd be crazy. Like we're animals. Like,
and guess what? We call white people, and we would call white people crazy. We would call white people crazy for talking to their kids. We would call white people crazy for allowing their children to have a voice and to have that independence and that self-expression, because that's how comfortable and natural and common and sensible we thought like, and healthy that we thought silencing young people was. Not understanding the damage that it was doing. But then again, power oftentimes never does care or concern itself with the impact of that power onto whoever is projected onto. Because power typically is only out for itself, which is why you don't care how I feel as it relates to you not allowing me to speak up for myself. And then guess what? You're going to whip my ass when I internalize that frustration that you don't even allow me to confront in a healthy manner towards you. And I go out here and beat some kid's ass in the neighborhood, or I'm being disrespectful in school because I'm acting out. So you get to silence me and then get me to internalize my emotions in an unhealthy way. And then when that energy is forced to come out some sort of kind of way, because as a human being, I have to express myself. I'm given the inherent right to do so. Even though you're not allowing me to do so, I'm punished and reprimanded. And essentially, this is your fault, bitch. It's your fault I'm whipping ass in school. It's your fault that I ain't respecting no goddamn body. It's your fucking fault that I'm out in this motherfucker acting up, mom and dad. It's your fucking fault. Okay, girl, see, I'm having some flashbacks, bitch. You go ahead and keep talking.
No, but dude, I mean, I don't agree with you there. I don't agree with you. I mean, I agree because, and then, you know, these children grow up, you know, and they don't know who to go to. Then they join gangs because they can't go to their parents and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm feeling this way. And they act out in different weird sexual experiences, experimenting and all of that. Then they have to hide it, because they don't feel comfortable. They feel like they're so afraid of being condemned. And just like, look how the reaction I got when I just told you that I felt sad, or felt bad that you're talking to me that way. Oh my God! Like if I was to tell you that I'm looking at another boy or another girl, you know, and that's why you got.
Or that somebody touched me inappropriately, right, or somebody has sex with me.
Exactly. And look at the Catholic Church, for example. It's like in high positions were abusing their power. And, you know, it was just a sickness. And then, you know, because these kids would turn around all these secrets and you know, it's just a cesspool of just dysfunction.
Man.
The church. And the black family, like, in particular, because it's kind of, they're like run the same way, pretty much. Like the black church, or the church, what do you call it? The establishment. The religious hierarchy. It's very similar to the family structure, hierarchy. In particularly, we're not excluding anybody, but in particularly, because we are black, so we know how most of our families, you know, were structured. But yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, and see, my school of thought is consciousness and frequency and energy. So when I look at a lot of that older shit, like that 90s, 80s, 70s, older generational shit. Now, mind you, there are a lot of things there are a lot of principles and like what I do like about a lot of the old school values is the community aspect. Like kind of this idea that I am my neighbor and I am my brother's keeper. Like I love that idea of community because it reinforced community and a unity and kind of a family oriented attitude as it related to family and the neighborhood and all of that. But what I do absolutely throw out of the window is the respectability politic. And I think for me, these conversations are unique to me because as somebody who is very artistic and somebody who is very creative and expressive, I've oftentimes grew up, I was judged for having piercings and tattoos and for being a individual. And so a lot of these politics, just in general, they just really make me cringe at this idea that you think it's okay to look down upon me or to frown upon me or to disapprove of me because I don't carry myself the way that your little bubble tells you that I should carry myself. When you say a person should pull up their pants or a girl should be a woman should be covered up, like, I don't understand how you attach respect. Like, not the fact that this person is just a human being that they want respect, but based upon the way they carry themselves as a human being is what warrants respect. And what I find interesting about Maya Angelou is that when she sat down with this 14-year-old girl, what she found disrespectful was the fact that she referred to her as Maya, but she didn't see the respect in the form of the fact that the 14-year-old girl wanted to even sit down with her, was excited to sit down with Maya Angelou, had a happiness and a joy and a anticipation in her body when she knew she was going to get to interact with Maya Angelou, and you ripped that shit, you mean ass bitch. You ripped that from out of that girl's spirit. Now, I love me some Maya Angelou, but Maya Angelou can kiss my ass in that interview. She can kiss my ass. I love her. I love her work. I adore her work. A lot of her poetry is stuff that we recite today. But in that instance, Maya Angelou was fucking wrong. And I'm almost side-eyeing a little bit of her spirituality because it's hard for me to understand somebody as elevated in terms of spirit as Maya Angelou was able to be that dense and be that grounded in some idiotic ass belief system rather than to adhere and honor and respect and reciprocate the energy she was getting from that 14-year-old girl. Fuck her not calling you Miss Angelou, but the fact that this girl energy was so welcoming and open and accessible and inviting and vibrating in your presence, and you just couldn't commune with her energetically. You had to make it about something stupid. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I cannot agree, but at the same time, because first of all, I feel weird a little bit even talking about this. That the fact that this has been like, why is this being brought up now? The lady is dead and gone, has been for years.
Okay, so hold on. I'm hold on. No, you are. Hold on, because I need to answer that question because it can be. No, not that. But I just want to say that this came up, because the snippet began to circulate after Twitter user Prince Charming P uploaded it. He captioned the post, "I can't wait to turn 30 so I can read one of y'all for calling me by my first name like this." So essentially it came up as a joke. Somebody saw it, thought it was cute, but of course we live in a very PC culture, so that became a conversation piece. But go ahead.
Yeah, but excuse me. What I was going to say, you also have to be mindful, even though Maya Angelou is very spiritual, and she can still be. I don't think that takes anything away from her, but I think we just have, all of us have weak moments. We have fleshly moments. We have ego moments, and I think that was one of her moments we just captured on television. So I don't take anything away from her that she had. I was just disappointed that was that she, that was her doing that or coming at somebody that way, but. Hey, we don't know Maya Angelou and in her personal life. I'm sure she has the same weaknesses and the same subject to the same human frailties that we all are. She was still human, so I'm not going to sit there and bash her, for having like a moment like that. But in that moment, yeah, I do think 100% that was inappropriate. I thought that was out of order. I thought that was a diva moment, and if you want to be spiritual about it, I thought that was ego. And I think she may have been, I think that was part of her conditioning. I think it was part of her. I don't even think it was necessarily like sadistic or malicious. I think that was part, but I didn't think she. I actually think she caved in to the environment that she was in. All those white people around, and this is a chance for me to show them how respectable I am and that I'm still show them that I'm looking for the word, like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity. I wasn't planning this, but yeah, this little black girl just stood up just to call by my first name. Okay, this is an opportunity for me to get in another black person's butt, so the white people can see that, I get on my people too. I think it's kind of like when your parents, your parents are pretty nice, they're pretty okay, but then when somebody visits, it's like they're getting your butt extra hard, so it's like so the person can see that you don't show favoritism, or it's kind of like they put a little extra sauce on it. To me, that's how I took that moment. It's kind of like she just put a little extra sauce on it, or too much sauce on it. But I still think it was wrong. I think, and I felt bad for the girl. Like when I saw that clip, I was like, "Oh my God, that was so." I felt bad for the girl because she seemed so like you said, you can see her face light up. She got to ask my Angelou a question. Like she looks up to her like, oh, "I'm so honored to be in the room with this lady," and the lady just shot her down. Like she just got shot down, like on national television. It was embarrassing. Like, and I'm sure that was, I felt bad.
And that goes back to that dumb respectability politic and shit. As a black person, you don't ever have to prove a point about blackness in front of whiteness, because blackness is constantly being policed every motherfucking minute of the day to begin with. So you don't have to do that to our minority people. Like, you don't have to do that. That's already being, that's what's so fucking irky about it. Is that you're literally not even giving black people a fucking break. Black people not even giving black people a fucking break. And it's low-key disgusting. And I know that Maya Angelou is elevated, and this is like a bigger conversation beyond her, but it's also about her too. I don't think that this makes her less spiritual. Obviously, she did drop the motherfucking ball. I don't know where her tampon was when she did this interview.
From that way of thinking in her old age. That's why I asked you when you first told me about it. I said, was that an older clip, like she was younger, or was like middle aged, or was that when she was an old woman? And that was actually that was many years ago. That was she wasn't an old woman. Like,
I'ma just say this.
So she might have elevated in her thinking. She might have graduated from that.
I'm going to respect who respects me, but if you do have a personal preference for the way that you want to be spoken to and how you want to be spoken to, you need to present that to me in a respectful package as well, because I don't give a damn what age, height, width, race, gender, nationality, walk of life you come from. Once you give me the vibration of disrespect, the conversation is completely done. Bitch, it won't be nothing left to call you because there is nothing to say to you. So I don't mind people saying, refer to me as miss, him, her, what the fuck ever. But just understand that respect goes both ways. And Maya Angelou seemed to have done that one-sided thing in that moment, where not only did she use her right to, assert herself and establish the way that she wanted to be experienced in a setting, but she thought that it was okay to present that in this very cold, callous, absent of kindness type of way. Like, it was very void of anything appreciative. It's like you could have been so cozy about that, but it was harsh. It was critical. It was very chastising, and someone who was excited to speak to you was just really undeserving of that. But that should be a teachable moment for all older people. Like, it really is time that we just really transcend all of this dumb shit, and that we stop being desperate in our relationships, whether that's desperate in our relationships to our children, to our families, to our peers, to our siblings, in our romantic relationships, in the workplace. And it's just, can we, I feel like we can just eliminate all disrespectability politics shit by just simply treating people like fucking people. Fuck a title. Treat you like a person. If I'm simply respecting you, fuck it. Like, everything else is a fuck it in my head. Because we can simplify all the nuance by just establishing that respect should be kindness, and that is what real respect should be measured as. Not the titles you're using, but in your kindness. But that's just me.
Yeah, and I can say this to your point. This is the example. I have I have my mom, who I call mom. I never call her by her first name. And I also have an older sister who also helped raise me, but she supported raising me. And I call my sister by her first name, but in some aspects, I have more respect for my sister than I do my mom. So that is something to look at. I think you made some valid points.
So I guess the compromise is, it's okay for people to want to be referred to as whatever they want to be referred to, but that we should inform people how to address us in the same spirit in which we want to be spoken to. You want to be called Miss? Tell me that respectfully. That's the compromise.
Right. If
you want to be called a dog, tell me you want to be called a dog respectfully. And things can be fine. As long as those things work both ways. We literally cannot have this power no longer being in one direction. It cannot be these people here have the authority, everybody else has to be obedient to it. That's exactly what's wrong with our criminal justice system. That's exactly what's wrong with our judicial system. That's exactly what's wrong with our society to fucking day, is that it's only people wanting to rise to power and not equality. So yes, so the compromise just needs to be power in both directions.
That's right.
Authority in both directions. So we've already been in this conversation for almost a whole entire hour. Is there anything else that you want to add into this conversation before we transition?
Not really, but I'm sure with our diverse amount of listeners who will hear this, there might be some Christians listening, and someone might want to go to the Bible, where it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And then the same passage it also says, parents, do not provoke your children to wrath. So, as you said, the whole point of this conversation is that respect goes both ways. No two ways about it.
I agree. And I do want to add something to those verses. Those verses are out of the Old Testament. And interestingly enough, you better have respected your goddamn parents in the Old Testament, because they had the legal right to take you to the town square and have you executed, as many children were for simply being disobedient.
Yeah.
So there was real ramifications for so-called disobedience back in the Old Testament. But of course, we've used those verses to reinforce those things. But also the beauty about you following that verse with the one you followed it with is it goes back to being both-sided. Let's be both-sided about everything. How about that?
Yeah.
Like, power becomes very disproportionate, and it dysmorphs communities and peoples when it's simply one-sided. So the more that we get into sharing power, sharing authority, sharing respect, and not seeing that as something that only belongs in this person's hands or this certain type of person's hands, or only when a person gets to this age or when a person is this young, when we just remove those things and we simply teach respect for what it is as a principle system, because respect don't give a damn about age. Like, all of these nuances of gender and sexuality and race go out of the window when we're talking about principles. Those nuances don't exist where there is principle. Principle is like sunlight. It shines on the just and the unjust.
I heard somebody say, you're not powerful until you can empower And I find that very powerful. That's a very powerful statement in itself. And that speaks to, I don't think any one man or woman was ever meant to have complete and total and absolute power. And as the saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you see that every day around. You see it in the news every day. All of these powerful figures, you know, abusing their power, because it was never meant to be that way. Like you said, power was meant to be distributed, and we're meant as powerful. You know, the more powerful you are, the more you can empower the people who are powerless. And I think that's the way that's the way it's meant to be. That's the law of the universe.
That is beautiful, and that is the perfect conclusion to this conversation. You not in power until you empower others. Perfect. Perfect. So, do we feel complete in this dialogue?
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, here it is, you guys. You have heard it first. You have heard it here. I know you guys are going to fill the comment section up with you guys' views. I know that I have subscribers of all ages and races, and I am actually looking forward to seeing you guys' take on this Maya Angelou situation and the conversation around respectability politics. If you are pro respectability politics or anti respectability politics, and why. And if you feel like Miss Angelou did a bit too much, or if you feel like that's exactly the way that things are supposed to be. Leave your thoughts below, and you guys know to comment, rate, share, and subscribe, and that you can also cash at me if you want to donate to the show at $Consciouztv, and or you can PayPal me at paypal.me/ConsciouzTV. I do have another video coming up, and I'm going to give some shout outs to some of my contributors over the past few days. I have not forgotten about you guys. You guys can also email me at consciouztv@gmail.com. Troy from Georgia, any lasting words?
Not really. I think it was a good conversation. I loved it. You know, I like the fact that we can disagree, but still come together at the end. You know, I think that's what this is all about.
I'm glad that I can get you to be submissive and to comply.
Oh, please.
Well, thank you for joining me in this riveting conversation. We're going to continue this conversation in the comment section. You guys have a wonderful Sunday, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.